Let's be pros. Let's be pros about this.
My bad.
Pros before hoes.
Hello and welcome to the Never Heard of It podcast. I'm Craig Moorhead.
And I'm Shawn Harwell, and this is the show where we catch up on the movies that have fallen through all of our cracks.
Yes. And we have an extra crack today.
We do.
With us, Brian Crane from our Uncle podcast. What's your podcast?
I forget.
That's fine.
I think Snackish of Little something.
The petite,
yeah.
Le Petit Snack.
But hey guys, it's good.
Hi, Brian.
Hi.
We're glad to have you here today to
Yeah.
talk about our movie, which is called The Comfort of Strangers from 1990. Shawn, what was it about? 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 What was it about?
This movie, Craig, was about, and I'm reading the synopsis from Google, an Italian diplomat's son, played by Christopher Walken, follows and seduces English lovers, Rupert Everett and Natasha Richardson, in Venice, Italy.
Is that really what it was about?
That's very tip of the iceberg of what it's about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Brian, were you the one who suggested the movie?
Yes, it was me. I got to suggest this one. This was a book I'd read back in '08 by a famed author, Ian McEwan. And
what else has he written?
He's written books like Atonement, which is probably his most famous one. Enduring Love, which was a novel I read of his back in
Saturday.
In school. Saturday.
He did write Saturday.
Sure.
Friday.
He did write Friday.
And Friday, he wrote the film adaptation of
Oh.
Friday. Yes. No, he did do that.
Didn't realize that.
He's going for the full 7 days
Sure,
of the week,
sure.
you know,
That
sort
makes
of
sense.
the cycle, as he calls it.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently he's had kind of a falling off in, you know, critical acclaim since really Atonement. But this was an awesome, really tightly done, very slim novel that I was like, I found out there was a movie about it, like, holy cow, but it was nowhere to be found. Whatever, you know, outlets were available to me that time did not have that movie. So I knew you guys were doing this. You guys were awesome at finding movies. I threw it out there, and boom, like 20 minutes later, the movie is in my hands. So
well, and we should say, though, it's not the easiest one to find. There was a little bit of digging. Craig is good at finding these things. Yeah, I was surprised, too, because this is directed by Paul Schrader. It was adapted by Harold Pinter, noted playwright himself, and screenwriter.
Nobel Prize winning.
Yes. Filmed by Dante Spinotti. I mean, the people involved are kind of amazing for it not to have ever been on my radar whatsoever.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, also Christopher Walken, Helen Mirren.
And music, which was really good by Angelo Badalamenti.
Yes.
Right.
It was great. It was fantastic.
Holy Smoke, our very first podcast.
He
also did the music for that.
And of course, Twin Peaks.
Yes,
yeah,
that's how I know.
That's how I know him too. So yeah, it was just like kind of this hidden would-be gem with all these talented people, and like, why haven't I heard about this movie?
So, would-be gem. Shawn, was it a gem?
I definitely enjoyed it. I didn't have much of an expectation at all, even despite the fact of I've read Atonement. I think I read Enduring Love. Definitely saw both adaptations, enjoyed them. I know Paul Schrader's directorial work a little bit.
Yeah.
I saw some, what was that crazy movie he did?
Atonement?
No.
I mean, not Atonement, Affliction.
No, I have seen that and enjoyed that. It was Mishima. You ever seen that?
No.
It's a very weird Japanese-inspired thing that he did. So I wasn't sure where this would land on the scope of between art house, or if it was a period piece, or what. So I don't even know that I brought any expectations other than I expect it to appeal to sort of an adult crowd and hit those sort of high drama marks. And I think it did that really well in an execution level. No clue what I'm supposed to take away from this.
Yeah.
And I will say, before we get too far ahead of us, Brian, you also wrote a really interesting blog article about the book, I think when you read it almost 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
We'll put a link up to that as well, because reading that after watching this, I was like, oh, your takeaway from the book sounds very familiar to my takeaway from the movie, at least. And we can get into that a little bit about how it differs. But it sounds on the surface, at least from reading that the adaptation was at least somewhat faithful to the book.
Yeah.
Which then makes me even more curious about... And I do feel like, you know, literary fiction in particular, usually short fiction, can get away with some of the ambiguity or finding, as you do in this movie, a sharp right turn at the end that leaves you scratching your head a little bit about that takeaway. Yeah. And that's what happened with me. Other than that, I liked the performances. I thought they were cool.
Yeah.
The setting is great. The camera work is beautiful. I mean, like, I really felt like I could have watched that opening without any of those credits, they were distracting me from the fact of like where the camera's just moving slowly through this lavish apartment, and it looks amazing. So that was my sort of general thing. I appreciate the craftsmanship a lot. Not sure about thematic stuff, which we can talk about a little bit. Craig, you knew nothing about this going in, right? Other than
I didn't know anything. I had not read the book. I didn't know it existed.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, my takeaway was I didn't ever believe a second of it. There was nothing in it.
Are you
there
supposed
was.
to?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, that's what I've been trying to kind of parse.
Yeah.
I didn't believe a second of any of the acting, and not even talking about motivations or what people are saying to each other. It's just like I literally just the performances were like I'm watching the movie. I'm not being brought in. The things that are happening are unbelievable. The reactions to the things that are happening are unbelievable. I could never get my head around exactly where I was supposed to be. I'll agree with you. It's beautiful looking. Some casting is better than others, but in general, yeah. I mean, it's a very professionally put together movie. But I was as I feel lost at the beginning of that movie as I was in that last scene.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
And not even like I don't know. I mean, you know, there's some sort of menace going on. You know, there's some sort of thing going on under the surface, and it makes enough sense when it happens. You're like, okay, so this was kind of what was happening, I guess. But again, if you weren't taken in during the rest of the proceedings, then it kind of loses some oomph at the end, I guess.
And I think, just for a general plot synopsis to get into the meat of the movie, it is about this couple. They are not married. They have been together for several years. She has children, but they are not Rupert Everett's children, correct?
That's right.
And I think you find out later they sort of came to Italy. And there's a weird bit about the fact they were just there like 3 years prior.
Right, so it's not even a good vacation.
Yeah. And it's not. Like, she's ready to leave.
They don't know why. Yeah, why did we come again?
Yeah, 5 days early, she's ready to leave. But I think they sort of came to decide whether or not they're going to get married or continue this relationship. And one of the things that I liked about it early on that maybe clued me into the fact that, okay, we're not exactly in the real world here is there is a good bit of city exploring going on by them walking around, and I felt like I'm looking at Venice and it's empty.
Yeah,
and
it looks
not
almost like a
just,
backlot or something.
Yeah, not just the nighttime stuff, but even during the day, it's like there's just no people around. Like my knowledge of Venice does not correlate to what I was seeing, and so I was like, okay, is this something else being shown here? And then you get that sort of like sense of dread. Like occasionally you see walking in the distance. You can't even make out his face, just for a split second. You get early on they're being watched,
right,
and then photographed.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I wrote down it's almost 17, 18, 20 minutes before you see Walken or Mirren's faces.
Yes.
And then it's just Walken when he has that introduction. But yes, so they meet Christopher Walken one night looking for food, and he's just there being his weird self in a very white suit.
Yes.
And very Ford introduces himself to them, says, I know where you can get food, follow me. And then even within that, like they walk to this place that he's taking them to, and you're through the back alleys of Venice. There was like a 3-minute transition there. Like it doesn't just cut to them at the restaurant.
It's like walking in real time.
No, and like there was like, okay, is he going to kill them? Like what bad thing is going to happen here?
And halfway through that, and I think that's one of the places, and I realize, I maybe need to be a little more charitable.
You don't have to.
I don't have to, but I mean, if I want to enjoy movies, at some point I have to let the movie do what it wants to do, and then I kind of go along with it. But it was, halfway through this walking. I mean, here's the thing: if I'm walking through Venice with my wife, and Christopher Walken comes up to us, but of course it's not really Christopher Walken; it's some Italian guy. Yeah. But and then he says, "I know a place we can eat." Our first reaction will probably be, "Oh, cool. This local guy will tell us," and then halfway through that walk, we'll be like, "No, no, this isn't going well.
We'll find it ourselves.
Yeah.
Thanks for the name."
Yeah,
no, he wants to literally hold their hands and take them there.
Yeah. So
you would not have gone on that journey.
So again, like that journey would have been cut short.
Yes,
mainly because like my wife would have been already hungry. And she'd be like, Craig, fuck, I gotta eat right now. Like, I don't care. Because then when they get there, there's no goddamn food. Yeah, this wine is very nourishing. And it's like,
you're like, right.
Kyung would have been just like smashing bottles.
And they had breadsticks.
Yeah. So that's one of those, that's just an example of one of the blocks that I kind of had as I went through.
Well, let's talk to Brian for a second about that opening getting to the point of meeting Walken, because you knew from the book
Yeah.
what to expect. And so how did that... Were you more anticipatory of getting to that moment?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
that was the moment you were waiting for, because
Right.
it's like everything before that is setting up the couple, and they're sort of, I think, by design a bit bland.
Yes.
You know, not terribly interesting, but which sort of matches the city, which I think Ian McEwan despises. Ian McEwan, I feel like, has been to Venice at least once and has never
Had a bad
returned
time.
because he had a very bad time.
Yeah.
So he's setting the stage for this sort of, play of horrors to happen out. And so that moment when Robert appears and tries to, get them to come to his bar, like, I want to see how that happened. And I thought that played out really well, but it was funny though. He's wearing this white suit, which is kind of tacky a little bit. But what was funny was I had reread the book, and what he was actually wearing was a tight-fitting black semi-transparent shirt, a V-neck to the waist, a full hairy chest in display with a little a straight razor medallion hanging from his chest, which would send anybody running away. Into
I'd be less likely to follow him than the guy in the white suit.
Yeah, exactly.
In the movie, credits Giorgio Armani with being involved in the costuming of the...
Yes.
up front, in
Yeah,
the main titles.
Yeah, that's right. He made it into that.
Yeah.
So I thought that the white suit was a real step up for...
You're like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, exactly. But one thing I was sort of struck by in the movie was how it was really sort of a disadvertisement, I guess, against courtesy, because every time when they should have run for their lives,
Yes, they're...
what makes them go further, or what makes them do the wrong thing, is this reliance on being courtesy. I don't want to be rude, let's be polite, and that sort of thing. And
Sure.
I think like 2 or 3 separate times where they could have just said, you know what, no thanks, no thanks, and for whatever reason, Christopher Walken, Robert's character, he's just very, ingratiating, and, he knows exactly kind of what he has to say to sort of prey upon their natural courtesy, and off they go. And I was like, I think that's even more prevalent in the movie. And then at the end, that moment when Helen Mirren is waving to them, I mean, that there is nothing forcing them up there, other than this feeling like, oh, they saw us, oh, they're going to be really upset.
Now, are you saying that was in the book as well? Like that
I don't recall
Okay.
that aspect of it being as prevalent in the book. In the book,
Playing on the courtesy.
Courtesy as
Because
much.
that feels like a critique of, like, maybe that's like the British sensibility.
Yeah.
To be overly polite.
Right,
Like,
exactly, and in so doing are murdered by the Italian culture, which is so ingratiating. And,
Yeah.
Come on. So,
What
so
are you
I don't-
saying, Ian?
So yeah, exactly. It's like how much of an indictment of is it just of Venice? Is it all of Italy? Is it all of Italian culture that he was so despising of? But it's a hate letter to Venice. It's
well,
so
let's
amazing.
talk then about that story that Robert tells when they get to the bar.
Want me to do that? Would you? Really? Like me to do that? What? Shall I do that? All right. All right. My father was a very big man. All his life, he wore a black mustache. When it turned gray, he used a little brush to keep it black, such as ladies use for their eyes. Mascara. Everyone was afraid of him. My mother and my 4 sisters. At the dining table, you could not speak unless spoken to first by my father, but he loved me. I was his favorite.
Because that's my favorite movie, favorite moment of the movie.
Definitely.
But that also says a lot, I think, about this particular branch of Italian culture, perhaps.
Yeah.
And it's a story that we heard in voiceover a little bit at the very opening. But Robert sits down and they are talking, and basically the question becomes, how did you meet your wife? Who we find out is a Canadian diplomat, or she was the daughter of a Canadian diplomat.
That's right.
And so he tells this very long, I mean, it's probably, in the movie, I mean, it's got to be at least over 5 minutes, straight monologue.
Absolutely.
And what I loved about it was within like 30 seconds of it, the camera started moving away from Walken to other patrons in the bar, and it looked amazing. But it's basically a story about his father, who was a very large, big man, both, I think, emotionally and physically, same as a grandfather, and you get the sense that they sort of ruled over their family in a very typical patriarchal, physical and violent way, I guess. Right. And so Walken very clearly has fashioned himself in that model.
Yeah.
And you find out to what degree later on. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if that's like a bit stereotypical of what maybe we assume of like an Italian culture, even just from like thinking of The Godfather. But I don't know. But like, what did you think of that moment? Because I mean, I thought Walken just killed it.
He tells it brilliantly. But what's funny is Harold Pinter must have checked out then, because he just. I mean, that speech, almost in its entirety, is exactly from the novel, and it is a brilliant story. It's so evocative. You see it as he's saying it.
Mm-hmm. But it's horrific though, because it involves like his sisters like locking him in his father's study when he desperately was like drunk and had to pee and poop.
Right.
So he ruined his father's beloved library.
And it's like his father uses him against his sisters in one instance, and then his sisters use their father really as a tool against their brother to get him back, because there's always looming over everything this man with such, violent potentiality, and it's that sort of persona that Robert has taken in and begun he worships.
Let's talk about Rupert Everett for a little bit, because I stepped back for a moment watching this and was thinking, good God, they have called him beautiful.
Yeah.
Like 16 times in this movie, the women and the men both. And then, in conversation later on, I think Walken comes out and calls him like a communist poof.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. I never had the sense of, I don't know what he does. Like, it seemed like he was sent like maybe a galley of a novel that he's supposed to read. There's some manuscript in the opening that somebody's calling. He's like, Simon, I'm on vacation. I haven't read it yet. It's terrible. It's unreadable.
Yeah.
What's
his job?
For some reason I was thinking he was an actor or something, but
because she is. Yeah, his wife is Mary, the Natasha Richardson character. But yeah, I wasn't sure. I feel like that would have come out in...
Someone might have recognized
specifically
him, or with Robert.
With Robert and his wife, because they are, it turns out, basically stalking this guy and infatuated with him.
So,
but I don't know. I don't know what he did. But at any rate, like, he's not, despite the fact that he's cut like he's been working out 16 days a week.
That's not exactly a book editor type thing.
No, he doesn't look like a writer.
Right.
Yeah, he's still not that, you don't get the sense that he's like a strong arm kind of guy.
Not at all.
Masculine man at all.
Right.
Which in that sense, I thought it was really interesting casting.
Well, now let me ask this. So, they go to Robert's bar. They hear the story. They drink a lot of wine. Natasha Richardson barfs everywhere.
Disgusting sounding barf.
Oh, terrible! Yeah,
really awful.
Very juicy vomit
into the
sound.
canal, by the way.
Yeah. So just don't go swimming. But they sleep on the street essentially, and Robert finds them the next morning. And then is that when he insists they come to his house?
Yeah.
And get some real sleep or something.
Would you have done that?
Hell's no.
Yes.
Hell's no.
I think you would have heard enough from that previous night. Yeah. There's no way.
Even if I still thought he was a cool guy, now my wife is sick in the streets. I'm like, we're going to recuperate.
Yeah.
We need some space. But anyway, they go with him. They end up sleeping. They wake up. Their clothes are gone. Mm-hmm. Norm. Totally norm.
Yes.
Anyway, so one of them puts on a robe and goes out and talks to Helen Mirren, who tells them that she came in while they were sleeping. I hope you don't mind. But I came in while you were sleeping and sat and watched you for half an hour. Now, see, right there, no matter how courteous you are, to me, that is it.
Yeah.
Like, you're checking out of your hotel, going across Venice, finding a different place. Yeah. Like, that was kind of that was the big line that was too hard for me to believe they were going to continue past that.
Right.
You guys?
Well, and I think Mirren played it like she's psycho. Like, she's a great age wackadoodle.
Yeah,
and
she played it perfectly.
Even that line, I just sat there. It was like a half an hour I just sat there, and I was just like, what are you telling? And like, they are bothered by that, and yet
are they? Because
I thought Natasha Richardson was.
I mean, it's almost like she found it curious, but not like, oh God, like you came in the room.
Okay,
and
let's change. Let's do the chain of events here because it's all interesting.
Yeah.
So that happens, and then basically, Helen Mirren has been instructed by Robert to not give them their clothes back until they agree to have dinner with him.
Yeah.
Because he's gone out to get wine or whatever, take care of business. So they have no choice but to say, okay. She gives him the keys. He goes, gets the clothes out. There's some more interesting, weird dialogue between Helen Mirren and Tasha Richardson. They had their dinner with Christopher Walken, and like prior to that, I think they go into the famed study where he's got all the artifacts of his father, grandfather, all this or whatever. There's some discussion.
These books are the favorite literature of my father, my grandfather. All first editions. These are things my father used every day. Small things.
Your father seems to be very important to you.
My father and his father understood themselves clearly. They were men, and they were proud of their sex. Women understood them too. Now, women treat men like children because they can't take them seriously, but men, like my father, my grandfather, women took very seriously. There was no uncertainty, no confusion.
So, this is a museum dedicated to the good old days.
Walken turns, sucker punches him right in the stomach. Just a gut punch. It lasts a couple seconds, the scene does. They don't say anything. Then they go eat.
Yeah.
It doesn't come up in discussion there. There's obviously tension there, but he has yet to tell his wife. They go back to the hotel and proceed to have sex 16 times.
Somehow all of this
translates
just turned them on so brilliantly. Yeah. And that was my biggest problem. I understood that was what was supposed to happen, but I never saw it actually get there.
Right. And to me, I thought, okay, this is where they're going to end up becoming like the Christopher Walken, Helen Mirren character.
Sure.
Did not go that direction.
No. I tried to make them mirror images, and it wasn't.
Because you're waiting for him to just say, by the way, he punched me in the stomach while you were in the other room.
It's unusual.
And it doesn't happen till much after that. And then even when that does come up, she says, why didn't you tell me? And he's like, I don't know why.
I mean, I sort of filled it in for myself. I just, like you're in there and do you want to make a big scene? It's like, and especially where you're the person who's been struck and sort of humiliated by this much older guy. And so I could sort of see why he's like, maybe let's just play this out and we'll go and never come back kind of thing. Not that I wouldn't have handled it that way, but I could see how.
Yeah, I wouldn't have said it in their apartment necessarily.
Yeah.
But the second we left,
exactly.
He punched me in the stomach.
Exactly.
He punched me in the stomach.
Right.
Yeah.
Why
didn't you say anything? Because I was afraid he's gonna punch me again.
Yeah. Maybe he's gonna start punching everybody.
But it seems like it's a day and a half, 2 days later before he actually tells.
Yeah.
It's a long time.
Which I don't.
So here's a question.
Yes.
Is there any a lot of this again with the acting and the way things are happening and the reactions? At some point, I started thinking, is this some sort of, are we in a dream state of some kind?
Yeah.
Because even the way they talk to each other, and everything's very ADR'd, it kind of seems like, so nothing really feels, well, maybe it's just a bad copy that I was watching.
I think you're onto something.
But I mean, there's something there that I was like, okay, when he comes walking out of the bedroom with a sheet wrapped around him after she said that she's been watching the both of them. I was writing down, is this a penthouse letter?
Yeah.
Nothing in this.
It has that weird sort of Red Shoes, it could have gone in that Red Shoes diary direction.
If David Lynch had done this or something, it would have been his erotic masterpiece.
Yes.
Well, that'd have been something.
Right?
Wow. Yeah.
Because I never saw the real trajectory to them just wanting to bone after that night.
Yeah.
It's almost like it would have been. It needed to be Rupert punching that guy, and having some sort of primal,
he's been,
now I'm manly or something.
Or was it more of a thing where he felt demasculated?
Right, sure.
And so in order
in
order to reimpose himself and reestablish as no, I'm a man. I can still be manly. That was what powered him through this sort of
And that's totally totally plausible. Was there anything though sort of violent about? I don't remember there being them doing it. No, but
the sex.
Yeah, the sex scene.
No.
Everyone was enjoying it.
Yeah, it all seemed fine.
It didn't seem angry or.
It all seemed fine.
Well, I was certainly enjoying it. But yeah.
There was no. Yeah, I didn't see any kind of note of that, but I feel like that was, where Rupert Everett Collin and Christopher Walken's character Robert really differed in that. one will impose themselves as men and act in this way, and Colin will impose himself as a man in this completely normal, standard way.
That's a good point.
You and your norms.
Colin is not psychotic, as we know that Robert was.
Right.
In the end.
Right.
There was a conversation that Mary and Colin had, I think after like their first couple hours of having sex, they do go out and have like a dinner at a cafe that night. And she's just like, no, everyone's looking at your thighs and your butt here. It was like that.
That was a bizarre scene.
Yeah,
and they don't have a different name for thighs.
Yeah. And then he goes on and says, like, I want to build a machine that will have, basically screw you for years and years and years, forever. And then that's just like the end of the scene. And like, do you remember that conversation being in the book? Because that to me felt like, okay, I can see this working in a novel in some ways where it's just, you take it out and you place it in this scene in a cafe, and you're having to watch actual people say that, and you're just like, I don't know.
That all struck me as quite new. I mean, just based on my memory.
But could also be a Schrader thing, or a Harold Pinter thing.
Well, you know what that reminded me of, though, was Punch Drunk Love.
Yes.
There's that bit where Adam Sandler is like they've gone off on some romantic weekend finally or something, right? And like the way he's talking to her, he's like, I just want to take a sledgehammer and like
you're so
smash
cute.
your face. And all I can say is in that movie, like it made sense. Like it was a strange thing to say, but you knew how this guy was wired at that point. And so even though it was kind of disturbing, like it definitely made sense. But yeah, the Rupert thing. I mean, finally they were horny for each other, so that's a good thing, and like that's just where their heads were at, maybe.
But it was weird that all the men and women were all looking. They didn't look like they were looking at Rupert Everett as though aroused. They were looking at him like
they were disturbed.
Check out this guy. Who is this guy?
Yeah.
I'm upset this guy's here, and it was like they were completely oblivious to that sort of note, and I was like, I still don't know what that means.
Yeah.
And sometimes I wonder, because everyone seemed to know Robert.
Yeah.
To what extent did they know that what Robert was up to? It's like, oh, Robert doing his usual thing, like,
cruising.
Yeah. Is this just something that he does all the time? It was just sort of a bizarre thing. I didn't quite understand, all of that, but I felt like they succeeded in making Venice very scary.
Yeah.
I mean, just like them walking around at night when no one's around, and the dead city aspect of things, I just thought like they've captured that from the book, because there's this sort of dread and this gloom that's just pervasive, and there's that dreamlike quality to the whole thing, because he never says the word Venice that one time in the whole book.
Oh yeah.
You never know that it's exactly Venice, or that it's even really Italy. It's like they
an unnamed city in Italy with canals.
Yeah, exactly. But it kind of adds that if there's no specificity, then it's like it could be really anywhere.
Yeah.
And that kind of gives another layer to it, where it's like, is this happening? Is this like a dreamlike kind of thing or whatever? And when I finished the book, I was like, how could you make this into a movie and capture that atmosphere? And at certain points in the movie, I feel like they were nailing it. Yeah. And other points in the movie, I'm like, I think we're sort of lifting up out of that, and it's a little too tangible.
Like we stretched it too far.
And so it was just interesting to watch that balancing act all throughout.
Yeah.
Well,
the other part of that machine conversation was it that she wanted to amputate his arms and legs?
Yes. And
just use him for sex, and let like all her friends use him for sex. Yeah. Which didn't sound so bad. Go ahead. Yeah.
I think we should dive in and talk about the end.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's get in.
After the romp that they have for a couple days, I think it's rebuilding them on an emotional kind of like high point. They're in a good place as a couple. Yeah. For the first time since we've seen them. Yeah. And then they go out on a boat tour, and they get off the boat and they're walking around, and that's when they see and basically hear Helen Mirren, Robert's wife, basically yelling from across the canal from their apartment, "Hey, Mary, Colin, come over. And absolutely could have come up with 1,000 reasons. Don't even come up with a reason. Just say, "Hey, you can't hear you. We're not going back in that apartment.
Gotta catch a plane." Anything.
Yeah. And that's the hardest moment for me to believe in the entire movie was them going back into that apartment.
Yes.
Robert arrives. Robert basically takes Rupert Everett to go to the bar, correct?
Yes.
Leaving Natasha Richardson and Helen Mirren, who then Helen Mirren, who has noted back problems prior to this, then explains basically that when she and Christopher Walken make love, he beats the shit out of her, sort of.
Yeah.
But to the point where she started to like it.
Yeah.
So that's bad. She's making Natasha some tea, putting sugar in it. Oh no, it's just lemon. She's stirring it. Which I read a review and was like, when's the last time you've seen somebody like poison someone's tea in a movie?
That's true.
But she drugs Natasha Richardson.
Yeah.
She's getting very sleepy. She's barely conscious. Takes her into a room where they've got dozens of photographs of Rupert Everett on the wall. At this point, I'm thinking, okay, they're going to bring Rupert Everett back from the bar and screw his brains out in front of her. And they just basically they're both, Christopher Walken and Helen Mirren, want to have sex with the guy. They don't care about his wife.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, but they want her to be present and watch.
That's not what happens.
No, it isn't.
Not at all.
So I'm going to pass the mic to you.
So now Walken has walked Colin across Venice again to the bar.
Yes.
On the way there, he talks to some people in Italian, and at some point he says to Colin, "Do you know what I told them?" He says, "No." He says, "I told them that you're my lover."
And then my wife is jealous.
Right, and
Yes.
and yet again, I'm in this place where I'm just like, run screaming back to the apartment.
I thought he was going to get killed on that, like, because there's
those
all
guys
those
start kind of bunching around him. Yeah,
and he even says like, one of those guys like pinched me back there.
but yeah, so Helen Mirren shows her this room. Natasha Richardson has already seen pictures of Rupert
Yes, they
in their
know-
apartment before now.
Yes, all the more reason not to go there.
Yet again. But yeah, so then now Helen Mirren takes her in this room that's just every serial killer's room that you've ever seen in any movie, which is like pasted with Rupert Everett's face, and the poison starts taking effect, which basically sort of paralyzes her. So now she's in a catatonic state. Robert and what's his face, Rupert, come back, and Rupert is understandably upset about the fact that his wife seems to be very, very sick. Robert and Helen Mirren are saying, "Oh, everything's fine." So like some shit's about to hit. Yeah, sunstroke.
Yeah, but she's not warm.
But she's not. Yeah, exactly. So and he's call an ambulance. Yeah, it's a cold stroke.
Lukewarm.
Ice cream headache, very bad.
Yeah. So Rupert, who is a fairly strong-looking man, younger than either one of these two oldsters,
by a handful of years.
Again, I don't understand why the ending goes this way. But Walken grabs him by the throat and pushes him up against the wall. And Mirren's like grabbing his junk or something. And I don't remember every single beat here.
I know she kisses him.
Right.
Yeah. And then I know he basically has that moment. Do whatever you want. Don't hurt my wife.
Take her to the doctor. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Do whatever you want. Don't like. There's that moment where it's like he sort of gives up. You see like this thing where it's just like,
He's not going to win the situation.
Right.
The important thing is take care of your wife.
I don't know why he can't win the situation. There's no weapons involved yet. You can start kicking people in the nuts right now. Yeah. You might do all right. Anyway.
He's British. They don't fight back.
You're right.
He's just polite. He's too polite.
And so Walken pulls out a straight razor, slits his throat, while Natasha Richardson in a coma, like in her catatonic state, watches him just slide down the wall and bleed out. Yeah. And then Robert and the woman kiss each other. It's very
it's going to be awesome, right?
Very passionate.
It's just they're going right at it.
Stuff is going to get very steamy.
Yeah.
Then cut to next day we're in the police station.
Yeah. Well, I want to push pause for 1 second.
Pause.
Because I wrote down the line, and maybe it's in the book, but I think when Rupert says he says, "What do you want?" or something to that effect. But I wrote down what Walken said, and he says, "We'll show you what we want," and then cuts him. And I still, up to the point of slicing the throat, thought, yeah, okay, he's just going to hold the razor up and threaten him, and then they're going to have their way with him.
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, then the minute he kills him, I'm like, what does that do? I don't know. Like, why didn't you just do this earlier? Like, I don't know if there is that sexual gratification that they got from the death that maybe happens, and we're just not privy to that.
Right.
Possibly.
But then how is that set up?
Don't know.
Besides maybe the paintings at the beginning, like
and
that's
why,
the thing. I was trying to go back to like these operatic sort of super dramatic, but they didn't seem terribly violent, and maybe I just couldn't see them.
I don't know
very clearly. I don't know.
Why not kill the woman?
Yeah.
Because for all we know...
She watched the whole thing happen.
She watched the whole thing drugged.
And she's still alive.
Got to the point where she was then physically able to, move around and be herself again and leave and go to the police.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, she's able to do that.
And that's a very weird thing.
Because we end in the police station, and I wrote this line down. Because,
please do.
Because, again, if we're talking about a dream state, if we're talking about being unbelievable and not really hewing to reality in some way, a cop saying to her, "Why did you come to Venice? What were you looking for?"
Yeah.
Who the hell would ask a question like, "What were you looking for?"
Yeah.
Were you looking for love? Like,
right.
What? I mean, why did you come to Venice is good enough.
Yeah, I thought, okay, they're just doing the standard thing where your husband got killed by these people. You were clearly in the room. Like,
like, why are you all right?
Were you involved in this to some degree?
Right.
But the bigger thing that was weird to me was I thought, okay, she clearly went to the cops. They're questioning her. They got to do that. We're never going to hear or see from Robert and Helen Mirren again. But no, they're there.
Yeah.
They're in custody.
That was what was very surprising to me. I thought, like, the way that you do this movie is these dreamlike people in this dreamlike, world, they float away and evaporate.
It just dissipates.
They evaporate, and they go somewhere else. They're like vampires. They come up somewhere else.
Because they're ready to go.
Right.
Like, they're all packed up. They're leaving.
Exactly.
So they can kill him and disappear.
But then when they show up in the police station, like a couple of mooks, just like, you bring them up there and you ask them questions, and you're like, wait a second. I thought these were like really creepy, weirdo people.
How did they get caught?
Yeah, exactly. Did
they just turn themselves in?
They just like walked into the police station and said, "Here I am." Like that. I don't understand that.
Are they going to get away with it? Are they not? And which one even makes any sense?
And the best part is that then Christopher Walken gets to start telling the story about his father again and the mustache and the word mascara.
Which totally makes him psychotic.
Yes.
Like before it was like, okay, this is just a manifestation of like their sexual weirdness.
Yeah.
But that last scene just says, no, he's just out of his mind. Just completely out of his mind.
Well, and honestly, I took that last bit as just, earlier in the movie he tells that story, and it's like he's sort of casting a spell, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, and they're just going to go along with stuff. It means
something, right? Like, he's telling that because it's part of his whole, like, I'm a guy, you know me, now you can feel like you know me kind of a thing.
And that's kind of what I was trying to get to at the end, just in my own head, was basically, like, if they listen to him talk long enough, they'll he can hit him in the stomach. He can, he can whip out his junk anytime. They're gonna just keep coming back, and so I took that at the end as, oh well, he's gonna talk to the police, and then they're just gonna, okay, you're free to go,
right?
And and that's how they get away with it or something. But it seems like a long way to go to get away with something.
I would have even preferred something like he's there and he's, backslapping these guys, they all know him,
right?
And it's like
there's all cronies, and that's it.
We know how
you hate Italians, you guys.
Just take off. We'll figure it out. Something like that, where it's just like corrupt or something. But,
how did the book end?
The book ended where there was ambiguity.
But he does.
Could you read us the last paragraph?
Was that?
Could you read us the last?
We
paragraph?
might get sued. Let's.
Let's not do that.
So what happens is that as soon as Rupert Everett is murdered, and he is, but he's murdered on the wrist,
like slicing.
And the last line that Robert
throat is more cinematic.
Robert says to him is like, "See how easy it is," and just slices. And all up to that point, you feel like there's this sort of death wish, this sort of on Colin's part, where it's like this sort of like, yeah, this has to happen. I need this to happen. And then so after he's murdered, I think they're moved out to the courtyard. And that's where they're found, and that's where all the police stuff sort of comes into play. But and I think what the reason that Christopher Walken and Helen Mirren are appearing in the interrogation room is because there is some ambiguity in the end of the book about that. The policeman says this is something that happens a lot around here. You have the people they get the drugs, they photograph you. They empty their apartment. They get all that, and it's like, whoa, this is bizarre. This can't possibly. But again, it's like this kind of dreamlike thing, and part of it seems like getting caught is as much a part of the fun of it as the crime. And
sure.
Like, are they caught? But they don't make any mentions like, oh, they're we've got them upstairs or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think then Pinter and Schrader, they were just like, well, let's have him be caught. He sort of alludes to the fact that they might have been. And that's part of their modus operandi. So let's bring him in. But I for myself, I think that was the wrong call. I think that they just become wisps in the wind.
Right.
And
Like it should
go
have just
away.
been her at the end with the police just trying to
make sense of what the hell just
Yeah.
happened.
Right.
on this
Like
vacation.
Venice happened to you. This worst city in the world
Yeah.
happened to you. Like
Oh.
just like have Ian McEwan like twist the ship one last time, you know. But
You got Venice, bro. Well, actually, I thought of another movie that we talked about on this podcast, which was Two Faces of January, and the Patricia Highsmith kind of model, which then made me also think of Talented Mr. Ripley, which I think was only a few years behind this as far as coming out. And it's been so long since I've seen that movie, but from what I remember, and definitely from Two Faces of January, you get that sort of like Westerner in a foreign place that bad things happen.
yeah.
But there's definitely more closure. I mean, for sure. And the bad guy kind of loses in Two Faces of January. And I think in Talented Mr. Ripley as well. And so I wonder, like, you're trying to, like, make sense, like we do, about why these movies kind of, like, don't get the recognition or just the awareness factor, specifically when there's this level of talent involved.
Right.
Yeah.
I looked, it seemed like the critical reaction was kind of mixed, kind of okay. It was at the Cannes Film Festival, but beyond that, I mean, it clearly has not had much of a life. And like, even just as a McEwan piece, I would expect it to be more recognized. So I don't know. I mean, like, the only sense I can kind of make out of that is that it doesn't leave you in a place where you kind of have that, even like that fulfilled sense of understanding
a completed story,
even a bad situation. Like, it's not like it needs a happy ending, but like you're talking about, like having the bad guys get away with it,
right?
Like you still sort of can take away the lesson from that.
Yeah.
And this one is hard to do that. I think it really kind of is.
Agreed.
Even to say that, like, Italy's a bad place. Like,
You're right.
If that was what he was going from the book, like, I don't know how well that played out in the movie. Like, I still felt like, oh, dude, I totally want to go there. Like, it looked like...
Well, yeah, in the movie, it certainly feels so much more about this couple than about Venice to me.
For sure.
Because, like, that couple could be anywhere.
I didn't think... And even until I read your post, Brian, like, that had not occurred to me that this was some sort of, like, outstanding critique of a location.
Right. But it did seem awful to me in the movie, like the city.
Really?
Yeah, it did. I mean, it was like it was so barren. It was so desolate, and they couldn't get food at that bar.
Yeah.
Like in the book, it's described as wine and well-fingered breadsticks.
Yeah.
So these are stuff that had just been sitting out. That was all they had.
Yeah.
And then they go out to that courtyard and they're trying to get a drink of water because like her lips are swelling. It's like she's in a dire need.
And the waiter won't.
And they can't do it.
Yeah.
Like if you read that passage in here, you're just like, this guy has got a axe to grind against Venice. Like he hated it. It's almost like he's recounting his own, talking about how crowded it is. There's no tables. It's like, this elderly couple is writhing in their seats with the bill, and the waiters are ignoring them. They're all like huddled in the shade over here, and it's just like making you so angry to read it. And you're like, okay, I get why you wrote this whole book.
Yeah. I wonder, has he written anything that's set in Tennessee?
Yeah, it's like Gatlinburg Nights. That's his newest one.
And we should have said that up front. Like, this is the first episode we recorded that Craig and I are physically in the same room.
Yes,
which is nice. It is. But if it sounds a little different, that's why we're recording this live, which is just fine.
In a log cabin in the Tennessee Smokies.
Yeah. Couple other little things that I saw. One, I asked you guys this question. If you saw my notes, you probably know the answer.
I've been reading.
Too. Okay, Brian, how many times has Paul Schrader been nominated for an Academy Award?
I want to say 0 times.
You're absolutely right.
Okay, and I
here, dude.
I would say for the most part, that's earned.
I would disagree.
I don't have...
Taxi Bull and Raging... I mean, Taxi
Bull and Raging Driver. I love those movies.
Those two, combine them into one movie. He should, How do you not get nominated for
you get nominated for Best Screenplay. Absolutely. Yeah. He should have. But over the course, he kind of shifted more towards directing.
Yes.
And to my mind, his movies are challenging...
Affliction. Best adapted material. He didn't get a nomination for that.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't even know that he did the adaptation, but we'll just assume he did.
I didn't see Affliction, but Schrader has always struck me as someone who, like, he really goes hard after what he's going after.
Right.
But I'm very seldom do I feel...
Temptation of Christ, you don't get a nomination for Best Adapted for that?
Light Sleeper's supposed to be good.
Come on, like, yeah. I don't know.
He'll get an Irving G. Holzberg Award or something.
I don't know.
Well, people just like is there like an axe to grind against him Hollywood wise? Like, did he just badmouth enough people? Or
Not
something?
that I know. All I know is that one of his more recent movies was the one that he essentially self-financed.
The Canyons.
The Canyons with Lindsay Lohan and the actor,
porn star guy.
The porn star guy.
Yeah.
Like we don't know his name.
Craig Moore. His name is Craig Moore.
Yeah, thank you.
But I mean, when you actually read his filmography, I'm like, I mean, one of those should have netted him at least. Was he nominated or not an award? Just
he just never won, or
not even a straight up nomination from the Oscars.
That seems really bizarre.
That seems wrong. That does seem wrong.
So it looks like he's got a movie, and this could be amazing, coming out this year called Dog Eat Dog, or at least it came out in May in France. And all I need to know is it stars Nicolas Cage and Willem Dafoe. So that's like,
oh my gosh,
two titans of insanity, right?
You throw
there.
Christopher Walken in there, holy cow!
Yeah,
yeah.
But he should, yeah. Okay, so let's do last takeaways from Comfort Strangers. I would say I think this is a totally watchable movie. I think people should see this movie. I think there's enough to appreciate if you're a Walken fan at all. Cinematography wise, it's really cool. I don't know much of Natasha Richardson's work, and obviously it's very sad that she died when she did and how she did. I thought she was pretty good. I didn't mind her in this. I don't think anything that she did as an actress was necessarily bad. The character itself was, like we were saying, a little interesting moments, and that's more of the writing. So I don't know. What do you think?
Again, it came off so unbelievable to me, and I think I was stuck in a rut about making it, that it had to be some kind of, the reactions needed to be a little more, make more sense or something. Throughout the whole thing, I just felt like there was a piece that was missing for me that either I didn't catch or wasn't there. But yeah, again, there's plenty of good stuff to watch. It's not a boring thing to watch at all. If you're looking to complete your Schrader filmography or your
McEwan fans,
yeah.
It's an hour 45, I think.
Shouldn't stay away from it. Yeah.
Brian, and as an adaptation.
Yeah. So after I first finished it, I was like terrible.
The book or the movie?
The movie.
Okay.
The book I love. Like, it's one of my favorite movies, novels. And then, but then as I started thinking more about the movie, I was like, you know what? I actually like that movie. Like, the more I thought about it, the more there was something precise about it, sort of imprecision, I guess.
Yeah.
And the atmosphere that he was able to create was, I think, a real heavy lift, and he was able to do it in a lot of cases. So I would definitely say, especially with the talent involved and I don't know, the focus of the film, I would say that, it's a recommend. I think people should see it, if for nothing else other than see Christopher Walken at the peak of his Walkenness. I mean, that's just like, that's peak Christopher Walken.
He is. And like, I mean, it's funny too, if you're at all familiar with that SNL character that he does, where he's like, the very aggressive bachelor trying to get the people into his room to have some champagne.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you'll definitely think of that character.
Oh, yes. There are a couple times.
Yeah.
This is an aside, but did you guys catch the Godfather theme appearing throughout? And that was very distracting to me.
I did not.
Yes, in that, specifically in the opening scene where you're just getting opening credits and the camera's moving around, I thought of that score because my knowledge of Badalamenti...
The actual musical theme.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
When I think of that guy, I think of Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And it's like all that airy sort of like keyboard stuff. And so when I heard this, like, oh, this is like really heavy score.
Yeah.
And definitely thought of Godfather.
Yeah, there's just like there's like 3 or 4 notes in a row, and it's just like, oh, that's very iconic Godfather. And I'm like, that's sort of weird, whatever. And then it would appear like 3 or 4 times throughout the movie.
Italy, you know.
Buonasera.
Before we wrap up here, I was wondering, Brian, if we could talk briefly about your career as a storyboard artist.
Oh, sure.
Because I think some people might find that interesting. I know that you did the storyboards for, I think it was an independent comedy called Barstow 2008.
That's right, I did.
And that movie came out early 2000s?
Yeah, I guess it must have, maybe 2004, 2005.
And have you seen this?
I did watch it. I went to a screening at the Century City Place, or wherever it is, the Sunset, something that they show all the movies that people make and all that. So I saw it there, and I thought it was pretty good.
So maybe that would be a good one for us to do.
Did they follow your storyboards closely?
I felt that there were a number of instances where they did, but I think it was more in the vein of kind of a Christopher Guest movie.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's interesting to storyboard. Then.
Right, right, and I think the way that the setup was that he was set up at a production house, and they had me like for essentially half price. You know, just super cheap 22, 23-year-old stars. They throw him at him. He'll do the whole thing. Yeah. So I did that, but I think it kind of veered away from the storyboard, so it wasn't Hitchcockian at all.
And that movie was about an Olympic bid to have the Summer Olympics in Barstow in 2008.
Yes, yeah, it's a funny premise.
Yeah.
And I think it was F. Paul Wilson, who was sort of a semi-regular on Cheers. Yeah. He was the lead as this guy who was going to be the guy that brought the Olympics to Barstow, and it was kind of funny because it's like they're thinking of all the places to do the venues, and throughout it's like a comedy documentary or whatever, and so you had people always running in saying, you know where the bathrooms are at, because like that's the famous thing about Barstow, I guess, according to the director anyway.
People just stop.
It's just a place to go to the bathroom on your way to Las Vegas and vice versa. So it's like the halfway mark or something.
Now, would you be willing to tell the story about when you got roped into actually driving a vehicle for a shot on camera?
Yeah, that was for a movie called American Gun.
Oh, this is a different movie. Okay,
different movie. Yeah,
and you did storyboards for that as well?
I did. And they were even more rudimentary than my Barstow 2008 storyboards. So that shot in Vermont.
Sure.
And
Marcia Gay Harden, Forrest Whitaker. That's a good cast.
Yeah,
no, that's actually a different one.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
I was gonna say.
I saw that one come out. I was like, that's just like the one. This is the one with James Coburn and Virginia Madsen.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
that's good.
Still on board.
Yeah.
So in I think 6 years there's going to be another American Gun with another really solid cast, and then they'll just edit them all together.
That's In
any event, so. There was the James Coburn one.
Okay, 2002, folks.
Yeah, 2002.
Okay.
So it was a pretty low budget affair, and they needed a shot where I guess James Coburn's character was just driving from here to there.
Yeah.
But James Coburn wasn't on set yet, and they just wanted to get it done. Yeah. And it was just like a fairly skeleton crew in the pre-production part, and I was one of them. And they're like, hey, Brian, do you want to be a stunt driver? I'm like, what? And it's like, we just need you to drive on camera and just going under a freeway overpass. We'll be on the bridge and filming down. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And so I'll just be in the back. I'll just tell you when to go and all that. That was the director, Alan Jacobs, really nice guy. And so as we're preparing to do it, they say, we're going to have to black out your face. And I'm like, what? And so because we're going to see the camera, we don't want to see the contours of your face. We want to just be completely neutral. Right. So like, okay. And so here they go, and then they black my face out like this, and I'm suddenly in blackface driving in on the interstate system in Vermont, and I'm just like, holy cow! No one pulls me over.
State.
Very white state. And then, sure enough, I'm in the car. They say, okay, go. And I go, I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be on the movies. And I drive into the over the underpass, and it's like, okay, cut. And I was like, that was it. But I didn't get a stunt driver credit.
Ah, boo.
Yeah. That's my whole story in Hollywood. I never got the credit I thought I was going to get.
Yeah. Directors don't
that's everybody's story, bro.
All right.
Don't make your storyboard artist wear shoe polish on their face. No. This is a bad move. Last question about this. I saw recently Werner Herzog said something about like storyboards being a tool of cowards.
Yes,
basically.
I saw that.
Any thoughts on that?
I get it. I think most directors, if they're smart, are somewhat cowards. Because there's a lot of money involved, and not everyone is Kubrick or Werner Herzog who can afford to be in a scene and see how it's playing. And it's like, because I think Kubrick said something very similar. It's like, how can you storyboard something until you're on set and you know what's really happening and what you're really getting at? It's like, in a perfect world, if everyone can shoot that way, then yeah. But for everybody else who's got to do, 18 setups a day, storyboards are brilliant, and Hitchcock used them brilliantly. Everyone's still watching his movies. So I think if you can get away with not doing them and it works out for you, great. But I think for everybody else, I think a tightly storyboarded movie that you adhere to actually really stands out.
It's going to help you.
And now they do all the previs stuff, which is where they render things on the computer for a lot of these big action shots in these big movies. So it's just even like a step beyond
it is. It's essentially like animating your storyboards to almost a professional degree. Yeah.
Indeed.
So
that's the next step for you.
Yeah.
Maybe Barstow 2020.
Yeah. And then American Gun Part 3.
Oh, that's great.
2021? Yeah, that's going to be great.
I think this has been fun. I don't know that I have anything else. I think we could wrap it up there.
I think we can. I think we've covered the entire subject very deeply.
Yes. Thank you for your expertise and the good suggestion.
You're welcome.
Yes, Brian.
I'm glad I was able to get this movie into you guys and for you guys to help me locate this movie so I could see it. Was purely selfish.
Well,
that's fair enough.
I was happy to use you guys for this purpose.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
As always, you can find us online at neverheardpodcast.com. That has links to everything else you need to find. And then I think we're back next time in our full episode with another special one.
Yes.
We've got some ladies who are going to talk about the Wachowskis movie,
Bound.
That's for some people that have never heard of the movie Bound, and are going to have an interesting perspective on it.
It's going to be a good show.
Or 20 years after that movie was made, I think now.
Yeah.
So look forward to that dropping very soon.
We will drop it like it's hot.
Yeah. And keep making suggestions and keep scratching yourselves.
To the stars.
This has been great, guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Thanks. All right. Ciao. Mascara.